Good to have you with us. Rob Wittman joining us now, Congressman, 1st District Republican from Virginia. Congressman, great to have you, sir.
John, great to be back with you this morning.
Now, do you remember that conversation that we had when we first met in your office?
I do. I remember that. It was an introductory meeting. You were trying to get to know folks in the area, and we had a great discussion about what ails Washington and the things that need to be fixed. And one of the things we talked about was making sure members of Congress suffer the consequences when they don't get the job done.
And I remember you telling me, because I remember asking a question like, what is the thing that you find the most frustrating here? It was just kind of an intro meeting. I had never met you, and you had never met me. And you said, the fact that we go home without a budget and then there's like a crisis, in November. And I remember saying, this is just the craziest thing. It should be mandated. You simply work until you get a budget, and then you don't have one, you don't get paid. And you said that to me in 2010. Here we are, 2019, and we're still facing the same battle. Look, how do you get a compromise? Why don't the Democrats just, split the difference, give $2.9 billion as a down payment, which the president said he would accept again yesterday, just to compromise, and move on? Why are they doing this?
I don't know, John. It doesn't make sense. I can tell you that there is a different viewpoint by many members of the Democrat caucus, I think both in the House and Senate, saying that, first of all, that barriers do work, that there are barriers in certain areas of the border strategically placed. They work in making sure we have an orderly immigration system. Secondly, is that there are other things that they want to see done with immigration. In exchange for those, many of them are saying, hey, listen, let's sit down and work through this. Jim Clyburn, a member, was very thoughtful about saying, hey, we've got to fix this. Even Steny Hoyer in the leadership saying, hey, walls are not immoral. Walls in certain places do work. Barriers do work. So, however you want to term it, it needs to get done. The president offered what I thought was a very simple way to move forward. He said, listen, we'll do a 3-week CR, just put in there a prorated amount for us to get started on the wall. So if it's $5.7 billion over a year, prorate that rate per week for 3 weeks, and let's get the government reopened, and then we continue to negotiate on this. Senator Schumer, Mitch McConnell were talking about that. Nancy Pelosi comes back and says, no, absolutely not. So there's not even a willingness on the other side by Nancy Pelosi to negotiate. Now, I will say this: I think that the mindset of her members is different than Speaker Pelosi's, and I think what you're seeing is some of those members now doing things differently. On 3 occasions this past week and the week before, we put forward a provision in the bills that they've been bringing up to say, listen, let's pay federal workers. Let's pay them. It's not right for them to go to work and not be paid. Let's pay them, and we can work on the other elements of the budget. Just take out the dollars that go to pay their wages, pay them, and then let's talk about the rest of it. We couldn't even get enough Democrats on that to pass that. Now, there were more and more Democrats joining us on that. It started out, I believe, as 8 and then worked its way up to 12 or 13 or so. So we're starting to see more Democrats saying, hey, we have got to be able to do things to actually make substantive movement, first of all, to get the government reopened. But secondly, is we do have to address this issue on immigration. It's been put off for too long. And I can tell you, people expect Congress to be able to do both. They expect us to be able to run this government, to get funding of the government done, and to be able to address immigration. They know and expect that we do both.
They expect us to do both. It's a simple process. You're looking for a compromise. People know that we have barriers at work. It's like when Nancy Pelosi says the wall is immoral, then why not go to them and say, well, then tear down what we have? Nobody wants to do that because they know it's effective. This whole argument has become theater of the absurd. Everybody knows it's asinine and politically motivated. We can't get a compromise done. Schumer's meeting with McConnell. You know what's going to come out of that? No money for the wall. The president's not going to sign it. Okay, so we got to get this government open. We got to get people paid. And this whole thing's ridiculous. So here's the alternative. The president declares a national emergency and said, you know what, I've had enough. I'm going to build a wall. I'm going to deploy the military. I found $7 billion between DHS, military, funding to build things, forfeitures from the Treasury Department. I've cobbled it together. I got $7 billion. We're going to start Monday. We're going to bring shovels and cranes and break ground. On Tuesday, there'll be an injunction from the Ninth Circuit. Some judge in San Francisco will stop it. Okay, reopen the government, and then we have the debate going forward, and maybe we get some of it done. Is that an alternative? Because I don't see how you're going to solve this.
Yeah, John, we're just at loggerheads. To me, this is a simple solution if you have people that are willing to move, and the president has indicated on many occasions he's willing to move. I mean, he put a proposal out there so he could try to move things forward. That proposal didn't pass in the Senate yesterday. Neither did just a simple effort to reopen the government. So I think there's a feeling that we have to be able to do both. But I agree. The president's looking at all of the options out there. And, yes, if he does use an emergency order, then it will be contested in the courts. But we see that a lot of the things that the president has done or is doing have been contested or will be contested in the courts. So I think you just have to say, how do we find a way forward with this? Because, as you said, we have to get the government reopened. My concern with this are the federal government employees that are affected by this, and these are people that are going to work, and they should be paid. I mean, this is just ridiculous that they're not, and we should be getting border security done. People expect us to be able to do both, and we should be able to do both. This is not a binary choice. This is the ability for this body to take both issues, to negotiate, to find common ground, and to be able to get it done. And it's very unfortunate that this is not happening. My concern is, where does this lead us for the next 2 years of this Congress? I mean, if this is how things start off, what is going to get done in the next several years?
Nothing.
Especially when you have leaders there on the Democrat side that have no intent to do anything to work with the president.
Nothing is going to get done. Nothing is going to get done, and this whole thing is going to be resolved and litigated in 2020. It's all about now the 2020 cycle. I mean, that's what the whole thing is about. Nothing is going to get done. There's no bipartisanship. There's no, maybe he'll get an infrastructure bill done, but they'll fight over that. I mean, right now, your speaker, all she's interested in is making political hay and looking at how they can defeat Trump in 2020. And the problem she's got is she's not winning the issues. He's going to win again. And unless they're able to do what I think it was Sheriff Clark said, which is replenish their vote base with illegals, they're going to lose. So I don't really know what their strategy is, but I'm to the point, Congressman, I don't even care anymore. I just want to solve this. And so, so Lindsey Graham says, all right, let's do a 3-week CR. That'll give us plenty of time to negotiate. The president says they won't talk to me until day 20. Like, I've been down this path. How do you feel about that?
Well, I want us to be able to make progress on this immigration issue. I mean, this is something that's not going to go away. It's been put off. And listen, Republicans have been rightfully criticized. We had an opportunity last year to pass what I thought was a very good bill, and at least send that over the Senate so the Senate could look at it, put their version out there. We could negotiate and get to some solution to this issue. So, listen, Republicans missed an opportunity last year to be able to do that. Short of that, I think it's still something that has to be done, but we still have to be able to get the government reopened. And I think the president's looking at it and saying, hey, there aren't a whole lot of options left on the table. And I know that he is concerned about using an emergency order going forward, especially in light of the criticism that have been leveled in the past for the use of executive orders by previous presidents, President Obama, President Bush. I think he looks at it and says, listen, this is a job that should be done by the legislature. But he has given, I think, more than adequate time for both sides to come together to get it done. It doesn't appear as though there's any meaningful path forward, so the president has to look at, what does he do to be able to get government open. And if there's not even going to be anything in a continuing resolution that says, hey, we'll put even a little bit of money in there to continue to have the debate about the wall. I mean, they agreed to $1.6 billion previously, and now not to agree for a prorated amount of the $5.7 billion, which is, a small amount in relation to what it takes to continually fund the government, just says that they are absolutely unwilling to do anything there. So the president, I think, is frustrated with that. I think Lindsey Graham and other members of the Senate are trying to find a place to move forward to make sure that there's an opportunity to be able to address the immigration issue, but it's becoming more and more difficult to find a way to do that if the other side is not willing to give on anything. Now, I say that in context of the leadership there. Now, I've talked to other members on the Democrat side, and they've got a lot of, I think, very good ideas about how to move this forward. Mm-hmm. This really is loggerheads created by the leadership. It's created by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer saying, no, we're not going to do anything. Mm-hmm. And many of the members there got elected on saying, hey, I'm going to Washington. I'm going to go there to get things done. And they're trying to get things done. They're trying to put proposals out. So I see that there are some fractures on the other side as far as what they see is necessary going forward. In fact, a number of them have said, hey, just give the president the money for the border barrier, and let's move on and get some other things done. I think their members look at it and go, hey, we got a lot more to do. If we're getting hung up on this now, where does that leave us?
Right. Well, that's what Congressman Peterson from Minnesota said. He's a Democratic congressman, chairman, as you know, of the Agriculture Committee. Is like, let's just give him the $5 billion and move on. There's like all these other things we have to do. We're all stuck over something that he said at the end of the day just doesn't matter. So it's become a political football. I got to move on to another topic. Congressman Rob Wittman with us. He is a Republican congressman. Those that don't know him, from the 1st District of Virginia, that is in the Central Virginia area. He's also the ranking member on the subcommittee on Sea Power Readiness. Congressman Wittman, in a very bold move 2 days ago, the president and Vice President Mike Pence de-recognized the government of Venezuela, and their president Maduro says it's a false election that he just basically appointed himself. The president recognizing the opposition leader Guaido as the legitimate leader of Venezuela. This is a very bold move out of the box, certainly not consistent with the president's foreign policy, America First view of not toppling governments or getting involved in regime change. But I think they saw this as a dire circumstance. Pompeo has backed this up, the Secretary of State. And then Maduro saying, well, you've got 72 hours to get your diplomats out. Then Secretary Pompeo and the president said, no, we're not going to do that. Then we talk about sending the military in to protect our diplomats there. What's going on in Venezuela, sir?
Well, they're in a crisis in Venezuela. As you know, people are in the streets. Unfortunately, the Venezuelan government there are killing their own citizens in the streets. There is a situation where the election is not a legitimate election, and Mr. Guaido, who is the top leader in their legislative body under their constitution, is placed in that role as the country's leader and has announced that he is going to be taking up that role. So I think it's proper for the United States to recognize what is under the Constitution of Venezuela, something that is supposed to happen when you have this situation of an illegitimate election. And you see other nations around the world following suit, not just the United States, but many, many others. And, of course, China's not going to do that because China's invested a lot of money in Venezuela, and Russia's not going to be in favor of it because they have an alignment philosophically with the current government there in Venezuela. So I think the United States has made a good decision to stand strong. I think we do have to protect our interests there. I think that if you take direction from a leader that you've said that you're not recognizing as the leader of Venezuela, then you undercut your argument. So I think the United States is proper in saying, listen, our diplomats are going to stay there, that we are supporting the new leader there, Mr. Guaido, and stand strong and then say, hey, listen, we're going to protect our diplomats that are in there. We're not going to get in conflict with the Venezuela armed forces. We're not going to get into conflict with the Venezuelan people, but we are going to protect our members of the United States delegation there. So I don't think that we do anything other than have troops on standby. I don't think that we have members of the military there as a presence. I think that sends a bad message. But I think you can put a special Marine air ground task force offshore and an amphibious ship standing by. So if they do need to do something, they can go there and do that. And if Maduro tries to make a move, then they can protect our diplomats there. And of course, we already have Marines there as a contingent at the embassy to protect folks there. But I don't think that you send U.S. troops in as a presence there. I don't think that's the way to do it. But I do think that we need to defend our interests there.
All right, I got to take off. I want to thank Rob Wittman for being with us. House of Representatives member Dr. Rob Wittman, 1st District in Virginia. Congressman, thanks for being with us. Appreciate that insight.
Thanks so much, John. Y'all have a great weekend.